The courtroom was buzzing. Quiet voices, shifting papers, polished shoes tapping on marble floors. A veteran sat at the defense table, hands trembling slightly, back stiff, jaw tight like he was still holding formation. His uniform wasn't on his body anymore, but you could tell. The Marine never left him. His name was Samuel Hayes. Grey hair, sharp eyes, a left hand that wouldn't stop shaking, the kind of tremor only war or ghosts could give you. Most ignored him, except one man, Judge Whitford. A proud voice, polished robes, the type who'd never been far from air conditioning and applause. He peered down over his glasses, smirking. "Mr. Hayes," the judge said. "Mr. Hayes," the judge said, voice dripping with superiority. "Are you shaking because you're nervous, or because you can't control yourself anymore?" A few snickers floated from the back row. The bailiff smirked. A young attorney whispered, "Old man's falling apart." Samuel didn't answer. His hands trembled again. Not fear, memory, sand, smoke, screams, things a courtroom had never earned the right to imagine. Judge Whitford leaned back, satisfied with his own sarcasm. "Perhaps civilian life has been too overwhelming for you, Marine." He said, "Marine," like it was a pity, not an honor. Samuel quietly exhaled through his nose, steadying his breath. His lawyer leaned in. "You don't have to take this." "I've taken worse," Samuel murmured. Before the judge could continue, the back doors opened. A young man in uniform stepped in, marine blues immaculate, ribbons across his chest. He scanned the room, eyes locking on Samuel with deep respect, then walked to the front and quietly took a seat. Judge Whitford frowned, annoyed by the interruption. Samuel's trembling hand reached slowly into his coat pocket. The judge rolled his eyes. "Oh, wonderful. He's digging for tissues now." A muffled laugh rippled in the room. But Samuel didn't pull out tissues. He pulled out a small velvet-covered case, hands shaking worse now, not weakness, gravity. He opened it. Silence hit the room like a rifle shot. Inside, gleaming under the courthouse lights, lay the Medal of Honor, the highest military decoration in the United States. The courtroom froze. The bailiff's jaw dropped. Even the prosecution attorney stood up, breath caught in her throat. The judge's face drained to paper white. Samuel placed the medal gently on the table, hand steady now. When he spoke, his voice had steel in it. "I don't shake because I'm weak, Your Honor." His eyes locked with the judge's, unblinking. "I shake because sometimes the battlefield follows you home." No one breathed. He continued, voice low, controlled, deadly calm. "When the last memory you have of your brothers is them dying in your arms during a firefight, you don't stop shaking. You earn the right to." The judge swallowed, Adam's apple bobbing. Samuel leaned forward slightly. "And if you'd seen half the things I did to defend men like you, you'd shake too." Silence erupted into respect. The Marine in dress blues stood in unison, hands snapping to his forehead in a crisp salute. Then another veteran in the crowd stood, and another. Row by row the room rose. Silent, reverent salute. The judge didn't move, didn't speak, couldn't. Samuel looked at him. Not angry, just tired. "We don't tremble because we're broken," he said softly. "We tremble because we carried what others couldn't." He closed the medal case gently, and this time the judge trembled. For a long breath, the courtroom didn't feel like a courtroom. It felt like a chapel. No stained glass, no hymns, just human silence and the weight of sacrifice filling every inch of air. Judge Whitford tried to speak and couldn't. His hand, so steady when signing warrants, so quick when delivering sarcasm, hovered uselessly over the bench. He reached for the gavel, missed it, and then finally found the wood, as if it were a life raft. "See, court will recess," he managed, hoarse. 15 minutes. The gavel struck once. It sounded smaller than usual. The room did not exhale until the door behind the bench swallowed the judge whole. Samuel Hayes closed the velvet case and held it in both palms like it was a folded flag. The young Marine in blues, late 20s, posture etched in granite, stepped closer, then stopped at a respectful distance. "Sergeant Daniel Alvarez," he said quietly, "3rd Marine Aircraft Wing. Sir, may I—" Samuel lifted the case, opened it again. The medal gleamed like a sunrise. Alvarez didn't touch it. He didn't have to. His eyes said everything. "Thank you for carrying what you carried," Alvarez whispered. Samuel's tremor returned, the tremor that had been mocked, misread, misunderstood by civilians and papermen. Now it felt less like a flaw and more like a signal, like a field radio still catching a transmission from a day no one else remembered. His defense attorney, Dana Willis, approached carefully. "You all right, Mr. Hayes?" "I've been worse," Samuel said, "but I've also been better." Eddie, the bailiff who had smirked earlier, had lost his smirk somewhere between the medal and his conscience. He cleared his throat, eyes shiny. "Sir, Samuel spared him the apology. "You weren't there," he said gently. "That's all." A ripple of murmurs moved through the gallery. An older woman with a gold star pin pressed both hands to her mouth and wept without sound. A news stringer at the back snapped a photo and then lowered his camera, ashamed of himself for thinking of angles when a man had just unzipped a burial shroud in the middle of a court. When the door behind the bench opened again, it wasn't the judge who emerged first. It was the court clerk, followed by the chief bailiff, followed by the judge's law secretary. The machinery of the court had rearranged itself during the recess, like a hospital staff improvising for a surgery they hadn't scheduled. Then Judge Whitford returned. No robe change, no grand entrance, just a man who looked like he'd walked through rain no one else had felt. He sat. He did not reach for the gavel. "Mr. Hayes," he began, voice low enough that the room leaned in. "Counsel, Marine Sergeant Alvarez, ladies and gentlemen." He took off his glasses and placed them on the bench carefully, as if putting away a weapon. "In chambers," he said, "my clerk told me something I should have known before I ever opened my mouth today. Mr. Hayes, you are the recipient of the Medal of Honor, awarded for actions in Anbar Province 2006. He paused, throat working. "I read your citation," he continued. "I read about a night ambush, an IED, a burning MRAP, and the choice to go back into fire twice after you had already been ordered to withdraw. I read about the last man you carried out, Corporal Lewis, who died in a surgical unit with your hand on his chest. I read about your refusal to accept evacuation until every other Marine was loaded." A hush fell deeper. Alvarez's jaw tightened. He stared straight ahead. "And I read," the judge added, voice thinning, "that when reporters asked you how you did it, you said, 'I didn't do it. We did it. I just didn't leave.'" The judge looked at Samuel now, not down at him, not through him, at him. "I mocked your tremor," he said plainly. "I mistook the cost of your service for weakness. That was arrogance. It was ignorance. And it was wrong." He didn't look away. "Mr. Hayes, I owe you an apology, here on this record, in front of every witness present. More than that, I owe you remedy." The prosecution attorney stood, unsure whether to speak. The judge waved her down gently. "Counselor, please sit. I will handle the court's contrition before I hear from the Commonwealth." He turned to Samuel's lawyer. "Ms. Willis, the disturbance charge is dismissed with prejudice. The citation for contempt is vacated. Mr. Hayes should never have been brought into this courtroom in shackles of suspicion over an incident we now understand was a trauma response triggered by a fire alarm in a municipal building." A murmur of relief. The Gold Star mother sobbed again. This time it sounded like something in her had finally unclenched. "But dismissal," the judge continued, "does not cure culture." He squared his shoulders as if at parade rest behind the bench. "Effective immediately, this court is instituting a Veterans Dignity Protocol. Any case involving a veteran will trigger a trauma-informed intake, a check for service-connected disabilities, an automatic consult with the county's VA liaison, a mandatory judicial briefing on the veteran service record before the first word is spoken from this bench." He glanced at the clerk. "Put it into a standing order. Today." "Yes, Your Honor," she said, voice steady but bright with something like pride. The judge's eyes softened, and for a moment he didn't look like a robe at all. He looked like a man who had finally met the edge of his own ignorance and decided not to step back. "As for me," he said, "I will host a public forum in this building to listen, not speak, to veterans, caregivers, and families. I will invite the press. And I will say what I am saying now, that I was wrong, and that a court that cannot recognize courage is a court unworthy to judge." He inhaled, exhaled, then addressed the one man who had yet to move since the recess. "Mr. Hayes, I cannot undo the things you have seen. I cannot quiet your tremor. I can only promise that in my courtroom, the shake of a warrior's hand will never again be mistaken for the shakiness of his character." Samuel's chin lifted a fraction. Something in his eyes eased, a lock sliding back from a door that would never fully open, but might not slam any more. "Permission to speak, Your Honor?" he asked. "Please." Samuel stood. The tremor ran through his hand, but his spine was unbroken steel. "I'm not here for pity," he said. "And I'm not the only man whose hand won't hold still. The Corps taught me to carry weight. Some of it we still carry. That doesn't make us fragile. That makes us accountable for remembering." He glanced at Alvarez, then back to the bench. "You asked for remedy. Start with this. When you see someone shaking, ask what they had to hold up for so long that their muscles forgot how to stop." He closed the medal case again and left his palm on top of it. "Second, don't call us heroes unless you mean it on Tuesday morning in a crowded lobby when the alarm goes off and we hit the floor. Don't only mean it on a parade route." A few heads bowed. In the back row, a man in a contractor's polo wiped at his eyes with the heel of his hand, as if dust had found him indoors. "And last," Samuel said, breath steady, "make space, not just in court, in hiring, in clinics, in line at the DMV. We weren't taught to ask for room. We were taught to close gaps. Sometimes the most honorable thing you can do for a veteran is to open one." The judge nodded. "Yes," he said simply. "Yes." He looked to the Commonwealth's table. "Counsel." The prosecutor stood, formal by reflex but softer than before. "The Commonwealth has nothing to add that would improve this record, Your Honor. We stipulate to dismissal and offer our apology to Mr. Hayes." "Accepted," Samuel said, and meant it. The gavel came down, not like a hammer, more like a seal. "Case dismissed." The room did not erupt. No cheers, no outbursts. Just the slow rise of people standing because it felt wrong to sit after what had been said. Judge Whitford stepped down from the bench. He walked, not with the pomp of a robe, but with the careful steps of a man afraid to break something newly repaired. He stopped before Samuel, glanced at the medal case, and then, awkwardly, almost shyly, extended his hand. Samuel looked at it. Then he took it, his tremor rattling through both men's fingers. "I am sorry," the judge said. "I accept," Samuel replied, "on one condition." "Name it," Whitford said. "Come with me." The judge blinked. "Where?" Samuel nodded toward the gallery, where Sergeant Alvarez stood at attention. "To the memorial down the street," Samuel said. "There are 19 names on that wall from this county alone. I want you to hear them out loud. I want you to say them." Whitford's mouth opened, closed. He cleared his throat and nodded once. "I'll go," he said. "Today. Now," Samuel corrected softly. "Justice is timely, or it's not justice." A ripple, half surprise, half admiration, ran through the room. The judge turned to the bailiff. "Mr. Rhodes, court is in recess until tomorrow morning. Post a notice. Direct any urgent matters to the duty judge." "Yes, Your Honor." Whitford looked back at Samuel. "Lead the way." They exited through the front steps, not the private hallway. Reporters gathered by instinct, microphones raised. Nobody shouted. The visual said more than any shout could have. A judge walking beside a Marine, neither one ahead, both moving with purpose. The memorial was 3 blocks down, a sweep of polished black stone catching a new sun. The air smelled like wet leaves and the aluminum tang of flagpoles after rain. At the base, offerings, coins, unit patches, a pair of boots with laces tucked in, a faded photo of 6 young men pretending not to be boys. Samuel stopped, placed the velvet case on the low granite ledge, and opened it. The medal stared back at the sky as though the sky had earned it. The judge waited, not for the camera, not for the cue, but for the permission of silence. Samuel tapped a name. "Read it," he said. Whitford did. Then the next. And the next. 19 names, paced like a roll call that no one answered. Alvarez stood at attention the entire time, eyes forward. When they reached the last name, he saluted. One clean slice of the hand, one straight line of respect. The judge lowered his head. "I have presided over hundreds of sentencings," he said, "and none felt like a sentence until today." Samuel closed the medal case and picked it up. "Then make this your acquittal," he said. "Not of me, of your court, from ignorance." Whitford swallowed. "I will." "Prove it," Samuel said, but without sting. "And when you do, don't tell them who I was." The judge's eyebrows rose. "Tell them who we still are," Samuel finished, touching his trembling hand to his chest. "The ones who came home and kept carrying." A breeze moved the flag. A gull cried. The city, for once, did not hurry. Back in the court's shadow, a few hours later, word had spread without needing to be pushed. Not a headline, not a banner, just people texting people, "You won't believe what I saw today," and then sending a grainy photo of a judge, reading names with a Marine beside him. The court's website posted the new Veterans Dignity Protocol before noon. A link to local VA resources went up beside it. The clerk added a line at the top in italic grey. "If you served, we serve you with respect." Samuel returned to the quiet of a side entrance. Alvarez caught up to him. "Sir," the young Marine said, "permission to ask a personal question." "Go ahead." "What was the last thing he said, Corporal Lewis?" Samuel held the medal case tighter. "He asked me if I thought the ocean would remember his name." Alvarez swallowed. "And what did you say?" "I said the ocean remembers everyone," Samuel answered, voice thick, "but the living have to read the names." They stood in that together, the way men stand when they don't want to sit because sitting feels like surrender. Dana, the attorney, approached with a practical smile and eyes that had cried in a bathroom stall. "The records will be expunged by Friday," she said, "and the judge's office asked if you'd consider speaking at the forum." Samuel nodded once. "I'll speak, but I want others on the dais, a corpsman, a widow, a kid who grew up with a dad who came back different." "We'll make it happen," Dana said. Whitford emerged from the corridor and hesitated, then stepped forward. "Mr. Hayes, I've arranged a counseling liaison for any veteran who comes through here, and I've enrolled myself into the training first." Samuel studied him. "Good," he said. "Now, one more remedy." Whitford braced. "Yes. When alarms go off in this building," Samuel said, "do not treat it like an annoyance. Pause the docket. Let people breathe. The law can wait 90 seconds. A memory can't." The judge's smile was quick and unexpected. "Order entered," he said. "Consider it so." This time they both shook without shame. A quiet ending that isn't an ending. That night the courthouse sat in its usual stone silence, windows lit like patient eyes. On the 3rd floor, freshly taped to a bulletin board, a flyer announced "Listening Session. Veterans, Families and Caregivers," hosted by Hon. Malcolm Whitford, featuring Sergeant Rette, Samuel Hayes, USMC, Medal of Honor, because justice begins with listening. Down the hall, a janitor paused to read it. He had an old tattoo on his forearm, eagle, globe and anchor. He touched the ink with 2 fingers, nodded to nobody and kept sweeping. Samuel Hayes walked home along a route that let him hear the ocean. He didn't drink that night. He brewed tea and sat on his porch steps. The tremor was there, like always, but the hand on top of it, his good hand, held steady. Across town, Judge Whitford opened a box he hadn't touched in years. Inside, a photo, a younger him, a brother leaning on his shoulder before shipping off to a place with a name their mother couldn't pronounce. The brother didn't make it back. Whitford had never figured out what to do with that fact, except judge other men quickly, so he didn't have to judge himself slowly. He set the photo on his desk, beside a yellow legal pad with 5 words at the top. "Don't tell who he was." He circled it, then wrote beneath it, "Tell who they still are." Outside, the city sighed and slept. The ocean did what oceans do, took everything in and kept moving. And somewhere in that slow, unfinished quiet, a courtroom learned how to stand at attention. Not like gossip, like a hymn whispered from porch to porch. They weren't talking about a case. They were talking about a man, Samuel Hayes, the Marine whose hands trembled not from weakness, but from carrying ghosts. The courthouse held its first veterans listening session the following Friday. No fanfare, just chairs, coffee, and silence waiting to be filled. At first, only a few veterans came, then mothers, then widows, then kids wearing dog tags that didn't belong to them, except in grief. Judge Whitford sat on stage, no robe, just a plain suit. He held a notebook, not a gavel. Samuel sat beside him, not as a defendant, but as a standard. The first veteran stood, a Marine with one arm. He said 4 words, voice cracking. "I thought I was alone." Another Marine spoke, then a soldier, then a Navy corpsman who had held too many dying boys to count. Their words weren't loud. Truth rarely needs volume. Whitford listened, not like a judge, like a man learning how to be worthy of the flag on the wall behind him. When Samuel finally stood, the room quieted. His left hand trembled, but his voice did not. "Honor isn't what you wear on your chest. It's what you carry in your silence, and how you walk through the world, knowing what only you know." He scanned the room. "Some wounds bleed on the inside, but that doesn't make them less real. And if you see a veteran shake," he held up his trembling hand, "don't see a broken man. See a man who held steady when the world needed him." Heads bowed, hearts steadied. Then Whitford rose. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, "I requested the governor attend today." The room murmured. The governor approached the platform, flanked by military officials and Marines in dress blues. Samuel blinked, confused. "Sergeant Hayes," the governor said, "we honor those who earned valor in combat." He gestured, and 2 Marines brought forward a mahogany case. "But you showed this nation a different kind of valor, courage after the battlefield, dignity in the face of disrespect, leadership through humility." He opened the case. Inside, a medal gleamed. Not combat earned, nation earned, humanity earned. The Presidential Civilian Medal of Honor for integrity and public service. The room gasped. Even Whitford's lips parted in awe. "Because of you," the governor continued, "this state will train every judge on veteran trauma response. Our courts across the country are already calling to replicate your program. You served in war, and you have now served in peace." He pinned the medal to Samuel's jacket, beside the Medal of Honor. 2 honors, 2 battles, 2 victories. Whitford stepped forward, voice trembling. "Sergeant Hayes, I mocked what I did not understand. I spoke without listening. You answered without anger." He paused. "That makes you a better man than me. And I thank you for not letting my ignorance be the end of your story." Samuel's voice was steady. "Sir, forgiveness isn't given because someone deserves it. It's given so the world can move forward." The judge exhaled, relieved, redeemed. The Marine in dress blues stepped forward and saluted Samuel. Then every uniformed service member in the room rose. Then every civilian followed, not forced, not ordered, moved. Samuel didn't cry. He didn't smile widely. He just sat there, shaking hand over new medal, shoulders steady as a flag in a storm. A reporter whispered, awestruck, "From humiliated to honored." No one corrected her. They didn't need to. Samuel Hayes had never needed headlines, just truth. And as applause rolled like distant thunder, Samuel whispered to the young Marine beside him, "I didn't earn this for surviving war. I earned it for surviving coming home." Outside, the flag climbed the pole slowly, the rope clinking like a heartbeat. The wind caught it. It flew, and in the reflection of the courthouse glass, you could almost see the ghosts behind him, standing at attention. When the ceremony ended, the crowd slowly dispersed, some wiping tears, some walking taller than when they arrived. Samuel stepped outside, the late afternoon sunlight spilling across the courthouse steps like a quiet blessing. Grace Alvarez, the young Marine, walked beside him. "You changed something today," she said softly. Samuel shook his head. "No," he murmured, watching a flag ripple above. "I just reminded them who we are." A child approached hesitantly. Little boy, no more than 7, clutching a small American flag. "Sir, my daddy was a Marine. He's in heaven now." Samuel knelt slowly, tremor and all, until he was eye level with the boy. "He's not gone, son," Samuel whispered. "He just took the watch somewhere else." The boy saluted, sloppy, crooked, but full of heart. Samuel returned it, crisp and perfect, the kind of salute only earned by time, blood, and memory. As the child ran back to his mother, Samuel stared at the horizon, eyes steady, jaw set, trembling hand tucked gently against his chest. He had gone to war once. Today, he returned home, and for the first time in a long, long while, he didn't feel like a soldier trying to survive. He felt like a man finally allowed to live. That evening after the ceremony, Samuel walked slowly along the quiet street, not rushed, not hiding, just walking, like a man finally allowed to breathe again. The medal case rested in his palm like memory made solid. Grace walked at his side, hands in her pockets, still in uniform. She glanced at him, voice soft. "You know, people don't just talk about you now. They look up to you." Samuel chuckled under his breath. Not prideful, not dismissive. "Just real. I don't want them to look up," he said. "I want them to stand tall." A passing car slowed. The driver lowered the window, placed a hand over his heart, and nodded respectfully before driving on. Samuel paused. A small smile formed, not wide, not loud, but steady. They reached a park bench overlooking the ocean, same place he used to sit alone in the mornings when the world felt loud. Tonight, it felt quiet, clear. The wind carried the smell of salt and peace. A flag at the pier waved in the evening breeze, slow, dignified, alive. Grace sat beside him. Neither spoke for a moment. Then she said, "You didn't just change a court, you changed perspective." Samuel rested his cane against the bench. "A medal shines," he murmured, "but truth lasts longer." Grace nodded, then hesitated. "Do you ever miss it?" she asked. Samuel's eyes softened, not with pain, but with memory. "I miss the men. I don't miss the war." He let the breeze wash over him, the way waves wash a soldier's boots on the day he realizes he survived. "War makes heroes," he said softly. "Peace reveals them." Grace blinked back the sting in her eyes. Behind them, the footsteps of people slowed. Strangers recognized him, but no one stared. They simply walked past, with respect in their posture. The world had finally learned how to look at him, not as a broken soldier, not as a trembling hand, but as a man who had carried a nation and never dropped it. Samuel breathed deep. Tonight the air didn't taste like memory. It tasted like legacy.